Attribute selectors were introduced in CSS3, but lack of support in Internet Explorer 6 prevented their adoption. So what is an attribute selector? It matches an attribute in an element's opening tag, and optionally matches the attribute's value or part of the attribute's value. And it's been supported by all browsers since Internet Explorer 7. The basic attribute selectors look like this. In this example, LM represents the tag name and ATTR represents the name of the attribute, which goes between a pair of square brackets. Putting the attribute name in quotes is optional. This type of attribute selector matches regardless of the attribute's value. Then ATTR equals some value matches if the attribute has that exact value. Again, it doesn't matter if you put the value in quotes. And finally, inserting a tilde between the attribute name and the equals sign matches if the attribute is a space-separated list of values that contains an exact match for some value. That might be a little bit difficult to understand in theory. It's better to see it in practice. This page contains 3 images, but the second image doesn't have an alt attribute. So what I'm going to do is create an attribute selector which will put a border around images that have got an alt attribute, but it will ignore any image that doesn't have one. So go into the style sheet and create the attribute selector img, open square bracket, alt, close square bracket, and then we'll set it to have a border which is 5 pixels, and we'll choose a color for it, make it 900, which is a sort of dark maroon, and solid. And you can see that I've now got a border around the first image, but not around the second, and there is a border around the third image. And that's purely and simply because those 2 images have got alt attributes, the second image doesn't have one, so therefore the style is not applied to it. Targeting an attribute with a specific value has many practical uses. The styles for this form include this style definition for label, which makes the label 100 pixels wide and displays as an inline block. If I turn on live view, you'll see the effect that it has. What's happened is that this one is too long, and so it's scrunched up within the 100 pixels. So I'd like to create a special rule simply for this particular one. So if we go into the HTML code, you can see that the label is for terms. It uses the for attribute, and the value of the attribute is terms. So I need to create a style rule for label, open square bracket, for equals terms, close square bracket, and then the width I set to auto. And if I refresh live view, you'll see that that one particular label is no longer constrained by the 100 pixel width. Now let's say you want to increase the width of the text input fields. If you create a style rule for the input tag, let's see what happens. Input, width, 250 pixels. And refresh live view. And you'll see that what has happened is that it's affected the radio buttons, the checkbox and the submit button, forcing the submit button to be far too wide, and also moving the labels for the radio buttons and checkbox out of position. However, we can solve this by using an attribute selector for type equals text. So if we just change that, type equals text, and refresh live view, everything is back to normal. I think you'll find that using attribute selectors that look for an exact value extremely useful. Not quite so useful is the attribute selector that looks for an exact match in a space-separated list of words. Just to give you an example of how it works, let's look at this page here, which is a copy of the earlier page. And if you look at the title attributes, we've got the word fish in this one and fish in this one. So it's a space-separated list of words. So it can create a selector that looks for any title that contains the word fish in a space-separated list of words. So, img, open square bracket, title, tilde equals fish, close square bracket, and then we'll give it a background color of FF9, light yellow color. And there you see that we've now got a background color for the two images that contain fish in the title, but not for the other one because it doesn't contain fish. I don't find this attribute selector particularly useful, but it's available if you need it. Here's a reminder of the 3 attribute selectors covered in this video. To my mind, the most practical is the second one, which matches an element that has a specific attribute and value. I find it particularly useful for styling forms.